Welcome to the 153rd episode of the Jami Dulaney Plant-Based Wellness Podcast. My name is Jami Dulaney, and I'm your host. I'm a plant-based cardiologist and endurance athlete living in Southwest Florida. So welcome today. Today I have my registered dietitian, Addie Dulaney Majnaric, who happens to be my daughter. And we're going to start a new series today. And we're going to call it What the Fork, because, you know, there is things that just make us hit ourselves in the forehead. I can't believe I'm reading this or seeing this. So basically, we're going to talk about some misconceptions in medicine and nutrition, things you see in the paper, things you see online, and things that just happen that are shocking and just irritating to us that know better. And we want to share the information with you. So welcome, Addie.
Hello.
Happy Saturday. So we're recording.
Happy Saturday, and what the fork?
What the fork? We're recording today. So before we get started, in 2 weeks, you're in Atlanta, where you reside.
But in 2 weeks, I'll be home for
the 3rd annual Charlotte County Plant-Based Nutrition Conference.
Hoorah!
Yes, so it's going to be at Twin Isles Country Club. We're going to have a plant-based breakfast and lunch. You're going to speak, I'm going to speak, Dr. Doug Lyle from True North Health is going to speak, and our own little Timmerie Hagenberger from Sacramento is going to speak, the nutrition professor, and then you two are going to do a cooking demonstration. We're going to have question and answer sessions, and it's going to be in an intimate session, a setting, not just these big old halls where nobody gets to answer questions. This is going to be in a small country club ballroom, or it's really not even a ballroom. It's a room that's large enough to fit about 100 people. But we're going to have it. We're going to size it down so you have a personal experience. You get to have all your questions answered, and it's just going to be a great day.
Full plant-based breakfast and lunch spread. It's in you're sitting at tables with people, so it's in a meal type setting, but with presenters in the front and. It's just a great day, great atmosphere, and it would just be beneficial for anybody. If you already are plant-based, if you have no idea what plant-based nutrition is, but you're interested in it, if you have a family member who's plant-based and you'd like to know more about it, or if you're plant-based and you would like to help somebody else, snag a couple of tickets, bring your friends, and get educated.
So you can go on the website at drdulaney.com, DOCTORDULANEY. Get more information there, but there's also a link to Eventbrite so that you can purchase your tickets. In addition, if you're coming in from out of town, you can come in on Friday, and Addie and Timmerie and I are available for consultations. There's a few left. We also have a couple yoga sessions on Friday, so come in and make a weekend of it, and there's great places to run and bike in the area, and you can rent some bikes as well. So make a weekend and come and see us. But you got to get your tickets soon, because the event is actually March 23rd and 24th, and ticket sales are going to close in about a week. So, get online and get them today, because they are running out fast. So, it's been a good day. I'm getting ready to do our half marathon and whole marathon up in the Biltmore. So I went out and did a bit of a training run today. We actually had a little cool weather in Port Charlotte. I'm actually going to try something different. I always toy with this run-walk thing, but I'm actually going to do it this time. I'm going to do 3 minutes of running and 30 seconds of walking. This allows me to increase my pace during the run and catch up. So I'm going to see. I've been trying it out on my morning runs, and I've actually been clocking a better overall pace. So I'm actually going to stick to it this time. I always threaten, and I get in the herd of the marathon and, don't do it. But I'm actually going to try to do it this time, because we have, after this event, we have the ultra marathon out in California in Mendocino. So this is kind of a build-up training weekend run. So I think it'll be a good time to try it out. So we'll see how that goes. I'm doing some strength training as directed by Addie and her husband Nathan, who is the strength and conditioning coach at Georgia State. So thank you, Nathan.
Senior days today for Georgia State. Getting to the end of the basketball season. Just got to give a little shout out to Panther basketball.
Yes, go Panthers, and especially go strength and conditioning, because I could tell the big difference when I went up to see the game in the beginning of the year, and then I watched them on TV, and it's like, man, those guys are growing. So, and they're jumping out of the gym. So good job, strength and conditioning coaching. So we want to talk about some things today that we've seen. It kind of shocked us a little bit. And, I'm a cardiologist, and so I see mainly people in their 40s and on up anymore. I see some women that are pregnant that have had palpitations or arrhythmias. But for the most part, I see older individuals. But there was a recent article published looking at women given metformin during pregnancy.
And the risk of childhood obesity around early childhood.
Yeah, so this study looked at women with polycystic ovary disease and gestational diabetes, as well as diabetics and obese women, and these were the women that were prescribed metformin during the pregnancy. We know from way back that women who get gestational diabetes are very much at risk for getting diabetes in the future. We also know that obese women have much higher incidence of infertility, polycystic ovary disease, and diabetes. And it's a real shame, and then obviously when women get pregnant, they tend to gain weight. And if they're eating the standard American diet, they gain more weight. So it just becomes, this is the time in life of young women that things start to go really out of whack. And some women never get it reined in after pregnancy. I see, the women are coming in their 50s and 60s that are overweight and have all these in diabetes and hypertension. And we start talking, it's like, yes, when I was pregnant, I gained weight. And, after my first child, I lost a little bit. Second child, I didn't. And it skyrocketed from there.
But even from a dietitian standpoint, I think the conversation often starts after pregnancy, like you just said, like people are trying to lose the baby weight, for instance. But really, the conversation needs to start before then. No, do you need to be able to be, 2% body fat? Obviously, that's not what we're looking for. We're looking for health. We're looking for wellness. And that's both, within your fitness as well as your nutrition before you go into the stage of, carrying a child, for your health, for a healthy pregnancy, healthy delivery, as well as, the health of your child. So, we're starting to see more and more larger babies born, more instances of childhood obesity, and, overweight children. Under the age of 5, it's becoming more and more prevalent. And when you're growing and developing and you're overweight, it's been shown it's very much more hard for you later in life to lose weight. And those kids are often obese later in life, dealing with, heart disease much earlier than their parents were seeing. So, this isn't just about, covering, your conditions up with drugs. It's about, the conversation should be flipped to switching to lifestyle change for you and your family, because nutrition is so much more than what's on your plate. I say that all the time to my patients, but it's how you can provide health and wellness to yourself as well as to your family, especially as you're growing that family. So, I've talked to several people, helping with, early life nutrition, pre-pregnancy nutrition, and I just really promote that, if you are thinking about that next phase of your life, you consult with a dietitian and you make sure that your practices are, appropriate for pregnancy and post-pregnancy. Because, if you get it a little bit under control beforehand, it's a little bit easier to get it under control after, and to just be healthy all around. So my little 2 dietitian cents.
So this study actually looked at, so again, the population were pregnant women that had either polycystic ovary disease, gestational diabetes, or they were obese, and they were given metformin up to 2,000 milligrams daily. Now, we do know that metformin crosses the placenta, so the baby is exposed to, that drug and metabolites of that drug. And what it looked at was that children, and they follow these kids to 6 years of age, and what they saw was that from age 6, there was an increased risk of obesity in these children. And there wasn't really a change in their birth weight, but at age 2, there was an increase in weight. And what they've, attributed to is the mitochondrial effects that metformin has on, the children's muscle development, and that the mitochondria are your metabolite organelles in your muscle cells that help you, to metabolize glucose. And so there was a deficiency or an abnormality in these, leading to, these kids being significantly overweight. So, again, it just blows my mind. We throw pills at people instead of addressing the problem. Dr. Bernard was just down here, and he's on a book tour about the cheese, and we know that women that are exposed to a lot of dairy have so much more estrogen. There's such a high estrogen load, and dairy is an increased risk for polycystic ovary disease. It's a risk for endometriosis. And so we know if we can get people off of dairy early, obviously it would be nice to have them never on dairy, but the women that want to become pregnant, get them off of dairy so that they're not having this giant estrogen load. Go ahead, Ed.
The first thing that's going to pop up in somebody's mind is, what about the calcium in dairy? And I just want to touch on the fact that another great thing about our conference is that my talk is actually going to be centered on those popular questions, those popular nutrients, vitamins and minerals that you're going to have questions about with a plant-based diet, because with a recent event that we did for Charlotte County with Healthy Children Centered, we did a little handout on, all recommendations for healthy childhood nutrition and how they can be easily met with plants and plant-based foods. And so it takes the guesswork out of it. So, again, educating yourself, because, while it might not be standard practice, it is possible for you to incorporate these, ways of living into your life.
Right, and and as far as children, go into the Healthy Children. So we did the handout that you did, looking at the nutrients in a plant-based diet, and that was very educational for the people coming by our tents. And the other thing that I did that you said wouldn't be a hit, and it wasn't a hit at all, but I wanted to do a nut milk challenge. So we had these kids volunteer to put blindfolds on, and I wanted to see which nut milk they might prefer, because some kids may not have been exposed to nut milks, and then some may have just been exposed to almonds. So I wanted to give them a chance to taste all the different kinds of nut milks. Well, it turns out that, I must, even in shorts and a running shirt, look like a doctor, because I kind of scared some of them away. And then the other thing, but the majority of the children had never had nut milk. And so, if you can remember, if you start out on whole milk, and then people might switch to 2% and then 1% in skim milk. And I've heard people talk about, that skim milk is like water compared to the whole milk with all that fat in it. Well, nut milk, if you're going from whole milk to nut milk, it's, first day, it can be a pretty big surprise. And so, we blindfolded these kids. We just put a little mask on them, like a little party mask, like pin the tail on the donkey type of thing. And we had them take a little, we had hemp milk, coconut
Except
milk.
It would be pin the tail on the carrot, because we're humane. Continue.
Yes, sorry about that. That was bad.
Geez, folks, can't take her anywhere.
Actually, we pinned the tail on Michael. Anyway, that we hemp milk, coconut milk, a couple different kinds of almond milk, rice milk, oat milk, and it just didn't go over well. They tasted one. Actually, the hemp milk was pretty good. They had a lot of, because hemp milk has a little bit more. It's more hearty. It's a little bit thicker. It's almost, I'd just say a little bit probably more like regular milk. But for the most part, it was a shocker to these kids, because they're so used to having such sweet things and such thick, fatty things, that it was like,
right. So if you're starting off with all that hyper-saturated flavors in your food when you're little, of course it's going to be harder to switch to whole foods later in life. We are not oblivious to this fact, but you also have to be aware that it's not that the food tastes bad, it's how it's supposed to taste. You've just been used to, these hyper-saturated flavors.
And so then, so we did that. So, and then we had a cookie that was made out of carrots, pineapple, banana, raisins, and oats, and a little unsweetened coconut. And we started with, would you like a cookie? would you like a carrot cookie? No. Would you like a cookie? But again, people were looking for Chips Ahoy and Oreos. And, so the cookie, in and of itself was a shock because it had texture to it that was different, had some fiber to it. And the only, we were laughing yesterday, the only way that we started getting it, first, nobody wanted to come to my tent. It was like the tent with the carrots nobody wants. But the brownies were next. The brownies Girl Scout cookie tent was next to ours. So people were coming to that tent, but they didn't have Girl Scout cookies. They were just signing people up. So they came for a cookie there. We had cookies, but they weren't Girl Scouts, but they were expecting Girl Scout cookie flavors. So that was a bit of a shock to people. And then we also had vegetables and
herbs.
Well, we had vegetables to dip in hummus, and the hummus was a pimento cheese hummus, which we renamed to a Dorito cheese hummus. And they actually liked that because it did have a cheesy flavor. So we did chickpeas, nutritional yeast, a little garlic, red pepper gave it the color, so it looked like a cheese dip. And believe it or not, the two top vegetables that kids liked were carrots and broccoli. They liked raw broccoli. A lot of kids asked for raw broccoli because I think it looks like a tree, So it's a fun looking vegetable.
We'll
so
go with that.
I know. So they liked that. And then we had name the herbs. So we had basil and oregano and cilantro and parsley for them to taste, to taste a leaf, because I thought it might be fun to, you can eat leaf, you can eat, like you eat grass or whatever type of deal. And we had a couple kids like that. We had a couple kids kind of spit at us, but it was fun. The most amazing thing to me, though, grandparents afraid to have the kids come to our tent, or not afraid, but pulling them away because my tent logo says my heart beats on plants, and of course there's a beat and there's an EKG. My logo has that through it, and I think that the grandparents wanted no part of heart disease or anything like that, and so they were kind of pulling the kids by the hand. They didn't want to. They were skipping that tent altogether. One lady even says, "You don't want that carrot." And went on by. So it was enlightening for us, but we did talk to a lot of people, and we gave handouts for our 5 favorite recipes. They had the nutritional profile to look at. We gave them the recipe for the hummus if they wanted it, and the cookies that if they wanted it, for the people that liked it. So I think we did some good for some people. So it was very interesting. This week in the office, Addie is a consultant for me, even though she lives in Atlanta, and she does come down here occasionally, but most of the time you do your consults over the phone. And, we have a couple different programs. We have an online one where Addie runs that program and does nutrition consults once a month with people, and they have access to all our online content, including cooking demonstrations and audio from our nutrition classes. And then the level 2 program, Addie does a call once a month. I do a call once a month to people. And again, they have all the online access. And then she does my nutrition consults for our full members in the office. And when you're a full member of the program, you have access to us anytime you want. So we have people emailing us with glucoses on a daily basis. We talk to them when we want. We email when anybody wants to, back and forth. And then we, set up regular appointments. And so it's been very, very successful. And I am so happy to have Addie on board because, it's such a good team approach, because people need support in changing the way they eat. Just giving people a handout, you're unsuccessful. People are unsuccessful.
And it's not even, I think obviously when we're talking to people directly, it's obviously beneficial. They're obviously learning, but it's the ability to email us in between, when those burning questions come up, or, if you have, they're making these changes and people who are really sticking to it, they need to be in contact with you to titrate their medicines down, because that is the goal, to get people off of these meds. So, being able to have contact with you in between, like you said, we have several people we're checking in with them on, fitness goals, nutrition, logs, glucose readings, blood pressure every day, through text messaging. So I think it's a great approach because we don't just get to be, many little influencers every once in a while in people's lives. We really get to be a part of them and grow with them. And I think it's just really awesome to see people, once it clicks, once the light comes on, once they start seeing these health and benefits, it's so great because how hard they're working. And there's so much behind even the choice to make a lifestyle change before you even do anything. So when you get to see people who have struggled, who finally start to see these successes, it's truly wonderful.
Well, and let's do diabetes for instance, because we've had it's amazing the success as far as getting people off high dose insulin down to no insulin or no medication at all, or depending on where they are in their journey. But it's not without it's certainly not just stop your medication and everything is good. We need a lot of feedback. When I was in practice early on before plant-based life, we would have people come into the office once every 3 or 4 months, and they would bring their glucose logs, and we would look at, their breakfast, lunch, dinner, morning readings, and we would titrate their insulin. Okay, now, take more insulin, maybe add another medication. And that's typically what happens. You start with one medication, then you get another medication, and you look at those logs and you add medication to where you think if it's an evening problem, you add more medication that, targets the evening glucose. If it's a morning problem, you add a medication or an injection that targets the morning glucose. This is totally different. Now we look at their glucose logs on a daily basis with them. And we don't titrate things according to a number. We titrate according to what they're eating. So we look at, so if you have a glucose, for instance, say that was 190 3 hours after dinner. Well, what was dinner compared to the night before when the glucose might have been 150 3 hours after dinner? And so we work with people to help them identify what it is that they're eating that causes change in their glucose, to levels that they don't want, and help them to understand. Because sometimes it's, everybody says, oh, I ate too much fruit. They always go, I probably ate too much fruit. Because I tell them, Addie and I tell them right from the get-go, eat as much fruit as you want. Fruit is good for you. Antioxidants, phytonutrients, color, fiber, no restriction. Not juice, not fruit in a can, but whole fruit. And they'll say, oh, I think I ate too much fruit. And it's like, no, let's look back. And so Addie will look back, or I'll look back with their food log that day. And oftentimes we find a source of fat, whether it was butter on a piece of toast or it was oil in spaghetti sauce. So we can educate people as they go so that they start to make, how would you have made a different food choice? Sometimes, we have people that are, they do great breakfast and lunch, and dinner they struggle because they go out. Their family may not be plant-based. They go out to dinner a lot. So it's like, okay, so you went out. What choices could you have made differently where you were that may have resulted in a lower blood glucose in the evening? And sometimes it's a matter of making a game out of it. It's like, okay, you've been 200 in the evening for the last 3 days. Let's get under 200. That's the only thing we're going to focus on, is get that evening glucose down. So how can we make a choice that's better? And so it's goal setting, just like if you were training for a run or training for anything else. It puts the mindfulness back into things.
True.
So I think that, it's very interesting. I think, the more we do it, with patients, the different, we start to see more and more, people stumble over the same things. We're all human, and it helps for people also in the practice. We have a private Facebook page, and it helps to know that you're not the only one out there. You had a consult that he was struggling, and he said, well, maybe this is just not right for me, and you were able to help him.
Yes, because I think that it was so helpful because we were able to go through a food log. Because like you said, this isn't just, what happens. There's a reason. So I was able to see exactly what he was eating, excuse me. And that kind of brought us to one of our first what the fork moments of the week. And it had nothing to do with this individual's choices on his own. It was something, unfortunately, that we've seen with several clients recently with recipes that our clients are finding that are produced by these, healthy, whether they be recipe authors, whether they be physicians or dietitians, or these logos that they've seen that have to do with, health promotion. So if you think, you're getting something off of a website that's supposed to be all about lifestyle change, you should be able to use the recipes. They should be fine for you because you're making a lifestyle change. And we're very frustrated because that is not the case. And, we're having to teach people, it turned it into a positive situation. We were able to educate, this person on, what was wrong with this recipe, why at this point in his health journey, this isn't the right time for, nuts and seeds and oils and things like that, and how to spot them in the future if using recipes from other sources.
Yeah, so we took that from that patient because he had been using a cookbook that is a known cookbook out there.
And even website.
But the recipes were very calorie dense and had a lot of nuts and seeds. So sometimes people say, oh, this is oil free, but it's heavy in nuts. Nuts have a lot of oil in them. So if you're using nuts or, especially nut butters or tahini in these recipes, all of a sudden the caloric density and the fat density really goes up. So, we helped him to spot that. And so I decided in my level 3 class that we got a bunch of cookbooks, a bunch of vegan and plant-based cookbooks, healthy cookbooks, including Forks Over Knives cookbooks, How Not to Die cookbook, and various, well-known cookbooks out there, and went through them. How would you make this recipe less calorie dense? Because they may have good things in them, but you have to portion control some of these recipes to an extreme amount, which nobody talks about. And so we looked at the cookbooks, and so we said, okay, first thing, you go through, it's pretty easy. We eliminate the oil, the olive oil, or the soybean oil, or the sunflower seed oil. We eliminate that from the recipe. We eliminate the salt from the recipe because it's not a necessary item. Sometimes there's miso in a recipe. You have to watch, the amount. So if you look at the portion, you have to look at the portion size. So miso is, fermented soybeans. It's a prebiotic, but it also, has a salt load to it. So less of that, watering it down. If something has a tamari or soy sauce, then watering that down, using less of that. If there's something with say a chili paste or, other jarred condiment, then limiting them, using maybe the whole food, a hot pepper versus pepper sauce, and, how to look at recipes and alter things so that they're less calorie dense and more healthy, less salt, less oil.
Yeah, so and I think the focus too is you're not taking away the flavor when you are altering these recipes. And that's something I've been working with several people, just in this week with as well is, when you're taking away the oil and you're taking away the salt and the sugar, or some people were decreasing it, you are just taking away those flavor enhancers. So those aren't the flavors you're tasting. You wouldn't just, stick your spoon into a salt jar, please, and eat it straight. Those aren't things that you're actually craving. You're craving those flavors. So when you're going through those transitions, and you've been so used to, you know, a lot of sodium and things, use a little bit more of the spices in the recipes than it calls for. So you are increasing the spices naturally versus artificially.
Yeah, and then you start to taste these flavors. So we talked about the different spices, and I had everybody kind of chime in. What spice did you use for this? You made a handout for the classes, you know, various spices that go with various dishes for starters. You know, so we listed Indian spices, we listed Italian spices, we listed Thai spices, so that, you know, you could get an idea when you're starting to make some of these recipes, you know, what to grab for. But, you know, individual tastes, you know, then you can, you know, add and adjust. And when you're using these spices, there's no problem, you know, cumin and, you know, various different things. So it's a matter of tasting things as you go, to identify what spices that you like. And, you know, and your taste buds change. You know, you know, there's certain spices that I wasn't that big of a fan of early on that I love now, and I almost have to watch that I use too much of it because I want to stick it in a lot of things. So it's just, you need to, you know, feel free to experiment. I think, you know, we were talking earlier, when we do recipes, when we present recipes for the class, Addie does the whole nutritional profile per serving, salt, nutrient density, minerals, vitamins, and so forth. And, you know, we do an exact recipe. When I prepare it in class, I'm talking during the time that I'm preparing it, and I'm also preparing it for a large number of people. Usually we have about 20 people in the class. So I kind of, you know, I adjust things accordingly, a little bit of this, a little bit of that. And I want them to see a little bit of this and a little bit of that, because I want people to feel comfortable in tasting things as they go. You know, the funny part about it is when people were using oil and salt to cook with, they didn't measure it. They dumped it in. But now they're scared. They're deathly afraid of some of these spices, and so they want to know the exact amounts of them. But they had no regards for the ones that were so dangerous, being salt and oil and sugar.
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. It is interesting to see how people want to know, and you're not poking fun or anything, just an observation, specific amounts of spices to add to a recipe. Everybody wants specifics, and, you know, you and I are over here like, we don't measure. So that's been difficult when trying to, you know, put these recipes on paper, because, you know, I'm constantly tasting while I'm cooking. But what on the other side of that is when you've had, oh, we have to saute with olive oil, people say, but it's like nobody's measuring the olive oil. It's just a pour. So it's very interesting things that we're afraid to experiment with, but others that we've come so accustomed to just loading onto the pan.
So that was another little what the fork rant, I suspect. The other thing that we did in class, we got a McDonald's cheeseburger and small French fries, and I put gloves on and I squeezed them. And I squeezed, and, you know, like if you were digesting them, I squeezed and squeezed and squeezed, and I showed the class the grease on my hands on my gloves and in the bowl from just, you know, squeezing and kneading this burger and fries. And the smell was it really was repulsive. You know, if you haven't had something like that for a long time, the chemical smell of this stuff is just, you know, I didn't even want it like stinking up my kitchen, you know, in my classroom kitchen. But so I squeezed this stuff, and I couldn't make it. You know, there are people that I've had. I went to a lecture before where somebody had a cheeseburger in a Tupperware thing for like 3 years, and it doesn't disintegrate. And the more I couldn't make this stuff disintegrate. I needed it. And if you think about it, and I showed the students, this is in your body for days, rotting. All these chemicals, you're absorbing this fat, and it's just this big long. I made this big long tube. It looked like a sausage after I'd squeezed and kneaded this stuff all together, and it just doesn't fall apart. It's just one big greasy clump. And, you know, it's just amazing because we don't think about where our food comes from, you know.
Well,
Go ahead.
And I think even just on the French fries, people think that, all French fries, well, there's no animal products in that. But there was an article that came out just a couple years ago that the McDonald's French fries in the United States have 14 ingredients in them. So in addition to squeezing out all that oil, you're actually squeezing out one of the ingredients is an anti-foaming agent, as well as 4 or 5 different kinds of oils. And then you have, a tiny bit of potatoes, but I mean, if they're real, who would know? And in the UK, there's only 4 ingredients. That is something that I found, and it's just potatoes, vegetable oil, and dextrose, and a little salt, which obviously isn't ideal. But when you think about, again, like you just were starting to say, who we trust with our food, and it's like if you aren't able to see ingredients, if you aren't able to cook on your own, you don't know what's in food. I mean, this list, I just literally pulled it up. It's outrageous.
Yeah, and then we often people. It's funny because eggs are something if we don't, it's like the don't ask, don't tell policy when it comes to eggs. It's like, well, people say, well, I just eat egg whites. Well, if you just eat egg whites, you're basically have taken out all the nutrient that an egg, all the good things that an egg has to offer. You're left with a little bit of protein, but all the vitamins and minerals that people claim that are so great in eggs, and they do have a lot of vitamins and minerals because they are the offspring or the ovum of the chicken. So she's passing all of her nutrients off into this egg. But if you just eat the white, you're just getting a little bit of protein. But the other thing the egg has is all this cholesterol. But people don't want to talk about where the egg comes from, and especially if it's in something. So if people tell me, they're not worried about eggs, or they do eat eggs on occasion, to me that's translated into they eat a lot of eggs, because eggs are in a lot of products that you can ignore, so to speak. So when you go into Starbucks and you get pastries there, you're getting egg. If you get a birthday cake from a store-bought cake, it's eggs. Chances are if somebody makes a cake, there are going to be eggs in it and oil in it. And people don't realize, they could be getting 6-7 eggs a week through this because they're not actively asking what the ingredients are.
Right.
Did you pull up any ingredients, anything specific?
I did the fries. Did you want me to do something else while you're gone?
No, but I was, no, that's okay. Yeah, so you really have to be aware. It's like looking at, in my garage, my dad had all these gas cans labeled, a certain mix of this and this, depending if it was for the weed eater or the tiller or, the tractor. And very careful when I was growing up. Make sure you put the right kind of fuel in the right equipment or it won't run right. And most people are very cognizant of that. If they're supposed to buy unleaded fuel, they do. If they're supposed to buy high test, they do. They're worried when you take your car to get the oil changed. Are you going to put the right weight oil in your car for the driving conditions? Are you going to put the right kind of tires on for the best wear? But then when it comes to your body, just put anything in it. So, we want to try to take this focus back on if it's just becoming more mindful and questioning what is in the food that you eat. It's very important. Today, my mother came over and she brought me this article, and it's kind of fun. My mom, we have 3 generations of plant-based Dulaney women, and my mom being the most senior, she was kind of she had more years eating a regular diet, and so some of these facts she's still kind of surprised about, but when she sees something that supports what Addie and I do, she comes running over and it's like, see, everybody's, people are getting on board. So there was an article in our paper today, Making Americans Trim Again, a challenge to change life. And of course, Dr. Oz was listed. And he talks about fast foods. And, a lot of people say, well, I don't eat fast foods, but they go to chain restaurants and they go out to dinner. So what is the difference other than the price?
Exactly. And you still don't know what is in the food. You still don't know. I mean, if you aren't in control, like I always tell people, I am not a calorie counting dietitian. I'm a nutrient density focused dietitian. And I think that's what we pretty much preach to everybody for what we do. But when you are not in control of the food you're putting in your mouth, you have to be more aware of, okay, this may look just like some pasta with some red sauce for me, that I may think I went out and got a healthy plant-based meal. Like, okay, Italian, that's fine, that's safe. And I understand where that thought process comes from, but you aren't aware of the insane amount of salt and oil that is being put into those foods. So you're not necessarily getting fast food, but when you look at the nutrient content, I would bet that it's pretty similar.
Yeah, it's in some respects there could be even more oil and salt because it's sometimes a competition to see who can do the cheesiest, fattiest, so-called mouth-watering dish, Red Lobster or some Chili's type of quesadilla or something along those lines, and even the veggie burgers. It's a better choice than the regular burger, but you're still going to get a lot of oil and salt when you go out, so you have to be aware of that. Another study that was looked at this week, they looked at the participants of the DASH study over 6.5 years. In the DASH study, the DASH diet was designed to be a low sodium diet of 1,500 milligrams of sodium. Initially, it was going to be plant-based, but they figured that people wouldn't follow it, so they said, okay, you can have limited amounts of lean meats and fish and a little bit of dairy, but the main thing was to limit the sodium to 1,500 milligrams. And what they found out was that these people actually had less depression over 6.5-year follow-up than the control group. And the average age of the patients that they looked at was 81 years of age. So that's one thing we don't think about. We fail to connect the brain and nutrition, whether it be depression, whether it be cognitive abilities in children. We know that children that eat a better diet have a higher IQ, do better in school. But this depression thing, we have so many people in the United States on antidepressants and anti-anxiety medications. And you think about the nutrition, how, if you're eating this nutrient-poor, high-fat diet, you're not generating serotonin, you're not generating omega-3, serotonin and dopamines from your omega-3s. It would be great to be able to, just improve their nutrition and see what this would do.
Agreed. We think it's just weight related. For some reason, the food is just your weight, but it affects so much when you think that all, of your organ systems in the body have to have fuel to work. Where are they getting that fuel? From what you eat. So what you eat literally affects every breath that you take. And that shouldn't scare people. I take it as, how can we optimize it? Sorry, we have a cat playing with a bag in the background.
Your whole grain buckwheat cat?
Yes.
I can't actually hear that, so that's good.
Good.
We have, so between Addie has a rescue cat and a rescue dog in the background, and of course you've heard my rescue dog Gretchen here a couple times during the podcast, and I have a Vincenzo. He walks through a little bit every once in a while, and Samantha. So we do have background entertainment when we're doing the podcast. When I, talk to people, sometimes I say sometimes I talk to somebody, and sometimes I just talk to the animals. But so I guess pardon the extra input on occasion, or enjoy it, I should say.
Yeah, if you ever want to take a peek at what they look like, you can always follow both of us. Either what are you, Jami Dulaney on Instagram, and then I am Naturally Rooted Nutrition on Instagram. We have plenty of furry friend photos for your enjoyment.
And I guess, the last thing that, got me rattled this week was...
what the fork?
Yeah, what the fork? Minute clinics. Nothing more irritated. So it's like, so they're...
Fast food for your health.
So it's bad enough that you go to a regular doctor's office and you spend 2 hours waiting to be seen for 10 minutes. But now, so you got a 10-minute visit on a regular doctor's, but now CVS and, it's merged with CVS Caremark as the pharmaceutical end of it, and now they're merged with an insurance company, and now we're going to have minute clinics. So it's bad enough we do fast foods, and now we're going to do minute clinics.
Because that's all you're worth, people. Just a minute.
Just a minute, so you can go in and somebody can just give you a prescription. And what prescription do you think you're going to get? You're going to get the prescription that's tied to the pharmaceutical relationship with the minute clinic that you're at, or the drugstore that you're at, and the insurance company that you're at. So all this stuff is going to be biased. And do you think you're going to get any nutrition advice because obviously there's, I guess, maybe protein bars or fast foods because, there's always an aisle with chips and all this other kind of stuff and ice cream products. So there's not going to be much nutrition. You're going to basically, a minute. I mean, I really don't think I've ever spent just a minute with anybody. And it irritates me, the fact that it's okay for a person to walk in that's sick and they've dialed down their self-worth to only having somebody spend a minute with them. It also irritates me that you could replace a doctor-patient relationship or a doctor-registered dietitian relationship with something that could be done in a minute.
There's no way.
And again, so it's fix it, fix me quick and get me out, but it's not even fixing, it's just patching you up. So
just putting some concealer on your health pimples, people.
Yeah, or a patch on that tire that's bald. This is today's healthcare, but it's by no way medicine. It's by no way health or disease prevention. And I just can't even imagine how the health of our society is going to deteriorate with more and more of these minute clinics or these 10-minute visits. It just really, really saddens me. And, I just want to tell her, everybody is worth much more than that. There's nothing that can replace our original equipment of our body. This body will last for years and years and years if it's taken care of, but it won't last with minute visits and medications. How can you tell, even if somebody was just getting a medication, how can you tell the interactions with other medicines that they may have on in a minute to walk in? Nobody's going to know what people are on. So many side effects of medication.
And it's not like they're just talking to you for a minute. They have to type while they're talking and looking at the computer.
Yeah, so it really is. So don't think long and hard before you.
Don't sell yourself short.
No, you're worth more than that. And I would never have my family be treated like that, and so I would never want my patients to be treated like that, because even before we were plant-based, we have always run our practice how would we like our family members to be treated. That's how we treat our patients. And my dad used to say, if he had an appointment with another physician, he would say, well, tell him I'm going to be there. If his appointment was noon, he said, I'll be there at 11:30. And it's like, Dad, your appointment's not till noon. He's like, I'll be there early, and they better be on time, because my time is just as valuable as theirs. And he was absolutely right. Your time is every bit as valuable as any other person's. And so you should be treated with the respect that you give to other people. So that's just my rant for healthcare today. So.
And I want to, end on a little positive note here. Happy National Nutrition Month, everybody. March, if you didn't know, is National Nutrition Month. A little plug here, dietitian days coming up soon, so give me a little shout out. No, I'm just kidding. But we have our conference, coincidentally, probably not, falling in National Nutrition Month, and my theme for National Nutrition Month and what I've been promoting on different social media platforms is eat like you love yourself. So we just said you want medical care, health care that is worthy of you. Also, eat like you love yourself. Live every day like you love yourself, because you start off treating yourself right, you're going to have a much better day and a much better life.
So we look forward to meeting you in person. If you happen to be in Asheville and you're going to run the marathon, give me a shout out. I'd love to say hi. And otherwise, please come to our conference so that we can meet you. Choose, eat a colorful plate today and every day. Get out and move your body, and we'll see you next time.
Have a great one.